Hey, everybody. Bob Oxley here. It's another episode of Tips, Topics, Issues, and Positions. And today we're happy to have a student from Dixie State University, Dustin Mattei. And he is going to be talking to us about drones. Okay, something that we've seen in the last couple of years as far as cameras are concerned and recreational, but I don't think that's what he's going to be talking about. I think he wants to hone in on the military. I've had the pleasure of having Dustin as a student here at Dixie State University, as well as I've witnessed his presentation on drones at the Euchre conference at the Southern Utah University, as well as here at Dixie State at the research referendum that we've had here earlier this year. Welcome, Dustin.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, we're talking about this thing, drones, and I mentioned in my introduction that we're talking about not drones from a recreational standpoint. We're
No.
talking about military drones. Can you give us a little bit of a brief overview of what that is, and then we'll hone in on that?
Yeah, I mean, we all know about the drones that we buy from Best Buy or Amazon, and even some of those ones that we hear about on the news that are getting shot out of the sky when you get too close to the fires and stuff like that, taking pictures of the Grand Canyon. The drones that we're going to talk about today, they're militarized. There are two different classifications. There are the observers. There's the Raven drones, which are going to gather intelligence on the individuals that are marked. Then there are the Predator class drones, which are carrying payloads of Hellfire missiles that are used to do the strikes, and they work in conjunction together.
Wow. So let me ask you a question. I'm sure a lot of my questions will be naive because I'm thinking about drones and recreation, and now you're bringing up the military utilization. You mentioned Predator and the term Raven. Is that an international type of drone that military operations use?
They are recognized, of course, through the UN and through our actions outside of the United States internationally. So they are recognized, but those are actually models that we use by the United States that are created for these objectives.
Okay. So how does this all work? I'm really interested. When we're talking military drones, we're not talking about having a few drones at every Air Force base worldwide for the United States. How does this all work? Can you give us just an overview to educate me as well as our audience?
Right. So we do have drones in foreign countries on their airfields, but those are controlled by pilots via remote from Creek, Nevada, from such a place. Yeah. They're wired.
Wait a minute. Let me stop you. Are you telling me that drone operations worldwide for the U.S. military is controlled out of a location in Nevada? Is that by Nellis Air Force Base down there off of I-15?
Yeah.
I'm amazed. They are controlling drone operations worldwide from Nevada.
From sites like Nevada. Nevada is one of the bigger ones, yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So what happens is that signal gets carried over to Ramstein in Germany and then is broadcast to the drones that are actually waiting on the airfields and are prepped, ready to go. And so you have operators sitting in chairs, much like we are, looking at screens, much like we are, and taking part in these operations.
Wow. Can you give me, or give my audience an idea from an operational standpoint? I mean, what authorities go through as far as drone operations are concerned? Is that at what levels? There's got to be that before it sounds like a military strike, which is what it is.
Right. Yeah. So there's two different strikes that we have to talk about. There's a signature strike, which is on individuals who are high priority targets. We can relate this to like Osama bin Laden would be a signature strike if he were taken down by a drone. The other is kind of a group strike, which are more of there's personality strikes. I got my
Okay.
messages crossed. Personality strikes are individuals. I think personalities is like Osama bin Laden. Signature strikes are groups of people, which are to take down activities that are happening live action. And these are kind of given to the president on Tuesdays, where they kind of look at those who are being watched and who are we willing to take action against. And that's where that command structure starts on what they call Terror Tuesdays.
So Terror Tuesday. So that's in the Situation Room in the White House. Mm-hmm. Every Tuesday they convene and make determinations for drone strikes, and then it's handed down through the normal military chain of command.
Correct.
To our, and I'm just thinking this. I'm trying to visualize this. So it gets down to that little station out there by Nellis Air Force Base, and they're saying we're going to implement a strike somewhere in the Middle East, let's say.
Right. So they'll have the Ravens watching, doing surveillance over the individuals, and they'll be waiting for that moment for them to strike. From that point on, the predators will then launch, and they'll have kind of a laser-guided system where the predators will be drawn to the target, or the operator will be able to see through indicators to follow to that target and then launch the missile, which is laser-guided.
Wow. Well, I'm just trying to visually. You're hitting me with a lot of new information here.
Yeah.
As far as the attacks, if obviously they're overseas, they're going to be attacking. And you're saying that let me correct me if I'm wrong. We're saying the Raven is actually the one that does the overview,
mm-hmm.
and the Predator is the one that actually does the actual attacking.
Correct.
with laser guided missiles.
Yeah.
Going back to the Raven, its function. When you say that it's observing the target, at what altitude are we talking about?
They can be up to 20,000 feet, and they have about 10 frames per second live action.
So they can actually isolate individuals on the ground from 20,000 feet.
Yes.
That is amazing. As far as the implementation, let's say that the green light's given to our pilot there in Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the observation going on with the Raven, and then when we get the green light, then the Predator sent in.
Right.
Is there a procedure that has to be followed before it's actually fired, or is that once they get the green light from the Raven's observations, then the Predator just automatically goes in and targets?
Yeah, from what I haven't come from understanding about the subject, from that point on, it's released onto them, and they are green light to use full armorants and to take down the targets. Now, the targets are people, and that's something that they differentiate in the sense of there's combatants and there's non-combatants. That's a key term that we use in sociology is the social interaction. Symbolic interactionism. And so for us sitting here at home, when we watch the news, they say, well, here's the combatants that were killed, or here's the targets that were killed. We actually don't get to see that these were people. And that's kind of the ethics that is coming around this. Is my research wasn't so much on the actual deployment of the drones as it is what's the ethic use of them.
Okay, so we can evolve into that. Let's move forward. So we've got a pretty simplistic idea of what's transpiring. Mm-hmm. We've got, let me just recap. Tuesdays, the White House and the Situation Room identifies a target. That goes through the chain of command, and then those drones, the Ravens dispatched to do the observations of individuals mm-hmm. from as high as 20,000 feet in the air, so there's no way that people could even be aware they're being watched.
Right, and this is a time process, so they'll be watching them for a while, of course.
Okay, and then from there, if the green light is given, in other words, the target has been confirmed it's there, then they send in the Predators that actually launch the lasered missiles.
Right, the Hellfire missiles, yeah.
Wow. Okay, and so a couple things going on here, because you're talking about morality, ethics, and the point that you made already is that we here in the United States get information that there was a drone strike at this location, and maybe some leaders were eliminated, is the
mm-hmm.
term. symbolic interactionism,
Yeah.
eliminated. That way, we are not sensitized to individuals that have been killed as a result of this action.
Right.
So there's where your concern is.
Yeah, I think as sociologists, our concern is to be sensitized to groups and peoples. And on the other side, they do not see these actions in the same light that we do. Many of the people in Pakistan, kind of switching to a point on the map to kind of give us a reference. Pakistan is an area where we haven't claimed war. There's no active campaign for the United States to be there, but yet we have over 300 over the last few years. We have over 300 drone strikes in that area, taking out individuals, Pakistani citizens, and other citizens of the world.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So make sure that we understand fully that they're considered a non-combatant zone.
Right. It's called a non-international. There's a few different classifications. If you look at Afghanistan, you have an international armed conflict. Pakistan is a non-international armed conflict, and that means that they're not a target of war or a declaration of war. And so there should be different rules that kind of apply to them, human rights that should be honored.
Okay, so we're talking about semantics here.
Right.
We're talking about using who's combatant, who's non-combatant, and then there's a different set of rules for each of those categories, and it could open it up and allow us to use drones, as we've discussed militarily, to take out identified quote-unquote enemies for national security reasons.
Right, and that law for us is the authorization for the use of military force. It's called the AUMF, and that's something that we authorize as the United States to take out imminent threats, or that we classify as imminent threats.
Which allows us to do this.
Yeah.
And the UN, how they're fully aware of this, and this is acceptable?
Actually, there's quite a bit of controversy in the UN as far as this goes. There's a few voices that are speaking out. There's a few researchers that have kind of contacted and said, hey, we're not following human rights. Under Article 11 of the UN, there's actually a right that we hold as American citizens that everyone should be proven guilty first before action's taken. And this is something that these individuals who are being targeted by signature strikes, by personality strikes, not all of them are getting that opportunity. They're getting enough evidence through these Raven collections and watching the observations, but the execution is done well before there's ever a trial.
Oh, so the execution using the predator has eliminated the target, whoever it could be, an individual that they were trying to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking here, we've all seen enough attacks in just warfare itself, and there's a lot of collateral damage. Is that the case, even though we claim to be so sophisticated with these drones, that even though we're targeting an individual with that attack using these missiles, do we have second thoughts if there's collateral damage in the area?
Collateral damage has been something that's another controversy with drone strikes. We actually don't know if there is controversial damage. We have as much as people saying that there's zero. The United States will say out there's no civilian casualties, to third parties and the governments that these are happening saying that there's almost like 70% are casualties. One of the problems we have is that we have it as combatants and non-combatants as our listed targets. And so really we don't have a word for civilians.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So by not having a word that identifies the civilians, i.e. those people that are innocent that just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, then we don't have to include those numbers in our statistics.
Right. Now, there is a function of the CIA or an organization of intelligence to go in afterwards and posthumously look at the individuals. The research that I have in front of me says that is often not the case. They usually use the drones to say this is an area of conflict. These are gentlemen of the age group that would be considered combatants. Let me define combatants for you so we can really understand the leaders or our listeners. Combatants are male individuals 18 years and up who are in a location of conflict. So even if me and you were standing at the supermarket and a terrorist operation was in go at that point and we fit the profile, we would be targets of combatants. So the civilian line is really blurred.
Wow, is it ever? So let's take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Okay. I have one question. If the predator drone misses its target, is there a standard operating procedure that they go back around and go after it again, or they set up another?
Yeah, so even after they hit their target, they will come around again. It's called a double tap. And they will strike whoever is assisting those individuals.
So it doesn't matter if they hit the target or not, they automatically come back a second time?
Yeah, that's part of the function.
So that's part of the operation.
Yeah.
So if we've hit our target, and listen to us, listen to me talking now. We're talking about human beings.
Yeah.
If we hit our target, automatically the predator comes around for the second run, and anybody that's ran to that location where this explosion took place and are helping others and are innocents.
Possible instance, yeah. But we don't know because they'll just be combatants or non-combatants. So they have to be proven afterwards. But yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's not the end.
Okay, lay it on me.
So often, some of the earlier strikes, they would do a tertiary attack, which was those that were at funerals for these individuals could be targets of a strike.
So the logic there is that the people that would be attending the funeral of the original combatant probably will be allies of that particular individual.
It's a possibility, yeah.
And so that's justified for a follow-up. What do you call it, a tertiary?
Tertiary attack, yeah.
You know, you're shocking me here today. I'm sure our listeners are sitting here going, are you kidding me?
Well, the further I got into this, the more my mouth just kind of just dropped open.
What's ironic is all this information's available.
Yeah.
It's out there that you got access. You did your research, obviously, on this.
I mean, it's over 50,000 articles that we went through the last 5 years.
Wow. Well, you're to be congratulated. I know I sat in on 2 of your presentations and I just was amazed, and you're hitting me with a lot of new stuff here today that you've identified.
Yeah.
And I'm sure our listeners are just like what you've gone through in your research and what I'm going through sitting here asking you questions. This is absolutely remarkable. Now, my mind is going all over here, but let me ask you a question, and this is probably asking you to make a conclusion or give an opinion based on your research.
Mm-hmm.
If obviously the drone attacks in the eyes of national security agencies are effective, it doesn't require our manpower, boots on the ground, as they say.
Right.
If we take it one step further here in the United States, and if we have these Raven drones that can isolate individuals from 20,000 feet, do you foresee anything like this in the future as far as our police agencies, local, state, federal police agencies utilizing drones?
Well, you hit on 2 topics, 2 important talks. I've had talks about this before. One is the effective use of them. They are effective. They are a weapon that is cheap for the United States comparably to an F-16 to fly. Again, our pilots are comfortable. They don't have to be overseas. They get to come home after their work. It's effective, and the weapon does a good job.
Interesting.
So in that case, it's easy for us to kind of make that logical leap that could this be in the United States? And the answer is yes, it's already here in the sense of observation.
So it's really, our police agencies are already using drones to identify possible criminals in the United States of America.
There are already agencies that are using drones, yes.
That makes me nervous.
Well, I mean, we are watched all sorts of ways, This is just another added big brother over our shoulder, so to speak.
That is something. That is something. Well, let's hope that we never have a regime that really adopts the big brother idea
Right.
from 1984's book,
Mm-hmm.
because it sounds to me like not only here in the United States, but internationally, I'm sure that the People's Republic of China are using drones. I'm sure that Russia's using drones.
Yeah.
And I don't know about North Korea, but you never know.
Well, that's a possibility we could probably look at in the future. I know that the Pakistani people are not fans of the drone program. Roughly 90% of the population polled dislikes the United States because of this, because of our drone actions. Taking that in, what the purpose of this is to really say is it something that we would allow in our backyard? You know, that's kind of the whole idea of sociology, is to bring it to us and say, is this something that we would allow, and would we really want to carry that further in other groups, in other countries?
Right. So we have the U.S. Constitution that's supposed to protect the citizens of the United States of America, but it doesn't preclude us from spying,
Right.
observations from drones at 20,000 feet. I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard this, it may just be a rumor, but that from 20,000 feet, these Raven-type drones can isolate an individual sitting in their backyard in crystal clarity.
Yeah, it could pick you out in a parking lot and track you as you kind of walk to your car. Again, at 10 frames per second, sometimes black and white. You know, that was when we were doing this that was about 5 years ago. So the technology could have evolved from since then. But from what we understand is you could be identified from 20,000 feet.
Oh. So where do we go from here? What's you say there's some concern in the United Nations
Yeah.
about the drone usage, and you've also brought up some positive points where it's cost effective. Military manpower could be downsized somewhat. Exposure to our own troops to harm's way. But on the other side, what you've brought out is that would we want this same type of, what do you call it now, non-combatant
Right.
characterization here in the United States for our own citizens?
Yeah.
What's your feeling on that?
My feeling is that this isn't something that I would want in my backyard. I wouldn't want the police to have the ability to identify crimes in action and then take action via a drone. We have enough issues with them having body cameras on and taking action in person.
Right. And I'm just thinking about drone strikes in certain locales.
Yeah.
And I'm envisioning them getting so sophisticated with smaller level type missiles using to target individuals that could be criminals in their own backyard, and the collateral damage they would claim would be minimal at best.
Right. And we saw this through the Bush era to the Obama administration's use of drone strikes, is that the missiles were evolving, and we saw that we will say casualties were down, but again, casualties are a very loose term in this ethic debate. But the casualties or the non-combatant targets were minimized as we went along. So it's a logical step to say, we could have the ability to launch a missile that is very direct and very minimal. At least we'll be told that it's very minimal in its impact on infrastructure and society around the criminal action.
Wow. Symbolic interactionism at its best.
Yeah.
I mean, all the terms that you've used during this broadcast are used to not relay it to individuals, human beings,
Mm-hmm.
but it's given terms and categories to justify attacks of other human beings.
Right.
Absolutely amazing. Well, I hate to say this, but guess what? We're almost out of time here. So, Dustin, I really appreciate you taking your time and coming over here and over at the Dixie State University studios at KDXI 100.3 and relaying some very shocking information and very, very informative for our audience. I'm sure that you've created a lot of topics for our listeners to use when they're with their friends and about drone attacks and our military operations, and particularly right down the street off of I-15 near Nellis Air Force Base. That's absolutely amazing to me. The one last comment I want to make to you is, and I'll just give you your opinion, when we think about those pilots, which we call these drone operators pilots, because it's like they're playing a video game, I'm sure that that has a mental effect on them, especially when they have to implement the predator in the attack itself.
Yeah.
So another one of those situations where we say it's easy, you're controlling these drones, but when you actually have a visual and seeing the result of that action, I'm sure that after a period of time, that has to have a detrimental effect mentally on these people.
Yeah, I think one of the terms that I've come to token around this is that it's a simple process, but it's not an easy thing to do. And my heart goes out to our operators who are doing these strikes. Again, the decision for them to make a strike is held way above their heads, and they're held to the inaction of someone else's, to our government's will.
And that's their job because they're in the military. This is what the chain of command's all about.
Exactly.
Dustin, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes another episode of Tips, Topics, Issues, and Positions. And this was another shocker, full of information. That's what we're all about. You can hear this on KDXI 100.3 FM at 3 o'clock on Fridays and rebroadcast at 4:30 on Saturdays. Or you can take a look at us on Facebook, YouTube, or Podbean, our podcast affiliate. Please have a safe and enjoyable day, and we'll see you next week, or we'll hear you next week. Okay, thanks, audience, and goodbye.